Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica and our continuing series, Sega Racing Renaissance, where I review every single 3D arcade mainline Sega racing game in a retrospective fashion. And today we have a bonus episode. It's Emergency Call Ambulance, and while this does have a vehicle and you are driving, it doesn't feel like a traditional racing game, so that's why it's on the bonus menu. But you guys asked about this, I said you hope I was doing it, and I did it just for you. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But right off the top, this game is amazing for three very specific reasons. One, it's made by Sega and you know I'm going to love it. Two, it runs on the Model 3 arcade board, my favorite board Sega ever made. And three, it takes place in Chicago, the city that I currently live in and have for about the last 12 years. I love the Dalmatian pulls the injured boy out of the vehicle as well. The EMTs couldn't do it, so they sent in Rover to take care of it. He's clearly the goodest of good boys. But honestly, the reason this is on the bonus episode is you're not really racing anybody. Just like Crazy Taxi, you're racing against a timer, and that is the boy's health meter. Now, grim but true, if it reaches 0, the boy says, "I don't want to die," and flatlines in the back of your ambulance. So even though this game has such cheery and colorful graphics to it, it can be grim if you don't perform well, and that's kind of actually a little bit awkward. Kids don't usually die in arcade games, but in Emergency Call Ambulance, they 100% will. And I do love that the Lake Michigan is just to our right. I live 2 blocks from it, and I could be in the water right now if I wanted to, but it's like -5 degrees outside, so probably not a good idea. But if you can't tell already, that ambulance is very hard to control, and that is where the fun in the game comes. It is big and weighty, and it swings left and right, what I assume what a regular ambulance would do in real life. I've never driven one, and I hope I never have to drive one or be in the back. But you'll see there I hit a telephone pole, and watch this ambulance in front of us. Just straight jumps itself into Lake Michigan. There's always so many fun things going on in the background. It is so much fun. But if you hit anything in this game, telephone pole, another vehicle, the boy in the back takes damage and that time meter goes down. Watch right here, we hit that car and we lost 3 seconds. The name of the game in Emergency Call Ambulance is Clean Driving, and even though the game only takes like 10 minutes from start to finish to beat if you're driving well, doing a time attack on it, learning all of the different routes and shortcuts you can take is where all of this fun comes in. And you'll see there's all sorts of different bonuses you can get at the end, and there are some secrets in the game that you do need to find. But I'm not going to show you many of the secrets because I want you to discover them for yourself if you've never played this game. But I do love these little story vignettes, even if they're both realistic and unrealistic at the same time. These cops chase these gangsters in here and get blown up by a rocket-propelled grenade, but one is perfectly fine and the other just has minor injuries. I'm pretty sure that's not how RPGs work in real life. It's realistic because somebody can die in the back of your ambulance. It's unrealistic because an RPG doesn't just separate their limbs from their body. It's just how the universe of the game works, and I've always found that amusing. But if you do want to play this game yourself, it works incredibly well on the Supermodel emulator, how I'm playing it here, and you get that glorious 16:9 forced widescreen. But this is a game that I will eventually pick up as an arcade PCB as well. But now that we're cruising through Chicago again, you'll see I hit that car there, and I do take some damage, and that is fair. But the one unfair thing about this game is sometimes you have to jump things like this elevated bridge, classic Chicago, and you take health damage even though the game gives you no choice but to jump that bridge. It's definitely trying to shave a second off here and there to make sure you pump more quarters into it. But I just love how iconic and fun driving through downtown Chicago under the L is, and learning all of these lines and races. If you take a corner right, you're saving time. But you'll see right here, I came in a little too hot and I had to take that turn wide. I'm going to lose about a second right there, and that second's going to become very important, because I will tell you right now, if you lose on the second, third, or fourth round, the game sends you right back to the beginning. There are no continues. But I love splitting those cop cars right there, even though I go into that telephone pole. I've got 10 seconds left, and that car sideswipes me, and little mistakes build up, because you get absolutely no coast in this game, and you'll see that's how close I got to the finish line. But the game's got a great soundtrack as well, so go ahead and listen for 45 seconds, and I'll come back and talk more about the game. Enjoy! you'll see we were able to succeed that second time around, even though it was tight. Now moving on to the third stage in the game, which is definitely my favorite. This hotel is on fire, and that sign's going to fall directly into the ground. I love these little story vignettes. But a fireman brings a pregnant woman outside, and you have to get her to the hospital. And now the stakes are really high. Like I said, this game is colorful and cheery, but if you don't get there in time, her and her unborn baby don't make it. And if you think about it in those terms, it gets kind of weird. It's just an observation that I make about this game. It's supposed to be fun and light and super kind of arcadey, but the results of you making a mistake are things like that. And I just think it's funny how half of the city is on fire because of that one hotel. It's like the Great Chicago Fire all over again. But I will say, this is where the game gets really hard. If you make more than like 2 mistakes, the chances of you getting to the hospital on time are basically impossible. The roads get tighter, the traffic gets heavier, and apparently none of the cars here stop for emergency sirens. They just keep driving on versus real life where people pull over to the side. If they pulled over, this game would be basically a free win. But I just love this game so much. I love how creative Sega can be, and this game was supposed to come to the Dreamcast along with Jambo Safari and Brave Firefighters, but none of them were ever ported home in their original formats. I might do an episode on Jambo Safari as a bonus episode. Leave me a comment down below and tell me if you want to see that, but that one's a really big stretch as far as racing games are concerned. But I love seeing Chicago at night, and I will say that this game is relatively close to the actual layout of the city. That was a big mistake there. That head-on accident will lose you like 10 seconds and slow your momentum, and you will see that unfortunately she didn't want to die, and she died in the back of the ambulance. And that's when the game just kind of gets a little bit creepy, but at least it shows you how close you were. Now, of course, it wouldn't be a Sega racing game if there wasn't some weird bonuses, and if you input the right code on the ambulance selection menu, you can get the 2 EMTs and their stretcher. And while you can skip cutscenes, you can also just hold down the start button and fast forward them, something that you never see in arcade games. I kind of just like how frantic the action is. As we get the kid in the back of the ambulance, it just mysteriously disappears, and now we run through the entire level with a gurney, and this is just hilarious. And Sega has a long history of putting very weird vehicles into the racing games. Horses in Manax TT Superbike, you can race as a cat in Scud Race Plus, but I think Emergency Call Ambulance has the best version of a weird vehicle. Just the 2 EMTs rapidly running through downtown Chicago, rolling a gurney with them. And the gurney controls a little bit better than the ambulance, to be honest with you, and the hitbox actually is much more narrow, so you can really squeak this thing through some spots that you normally wouldn't be able to. In some ways, it's like this gurney is easy mode, but it's just so much fun to watch. And I can't get over how fun this game is, even though it is so short. Sega was on fire in the 90s with arcade stuff, and their Model 3 arcade hardware is my favorite of all time, and this game is just a ton of fun. You know, somebody at the office was just saying, what if we did X? And they thought that sounded really fun on paper, and they just went and made an entire game with it. And you'll see here, getting through that traffic with the gurney is super easy, and you get to the arrival with 18 seconds to spare. And I also love that randomly, as you stop, the ambulance just reappears. They didn't take it out of the cutscene. It's just kind of funny, and it even helps on the third course as well. But I will say, this game, super easy to get to the third round, super hard to get anywhere past that even if you put it on easy. But this is the type of game that takes like 6 minutes to get to where you last continued and just keep playing. It would be a great speedrun game to try to get the best finish possible, to get the lowest time possible. And right there, Marina Towers, the building just to the right, I worked it on the 35th floor, and I love that I can see old work buildings in Sega arcade games. It's a really small, strange thing that I just absolutely love to point out when I can. But Emergency Call Ambulance is just a ton of fun. It is arcadey from start to finish with a capital A. It just didn't make the mainline racing series because you're really not racing against much of anything except your own death. The people in the back, if you don't go quick enough, die. And that might be the highest stakes in any racing game I have ever heard of. Short of that, I'll be back next week with another episode in this retrospective series, but unfortunately we didn't make it to the end and we lost our patient one more time. I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.